All right, hi everyone. Hi Ben, how's it going? Hi, welcome. Give everybody a few moments to sign on here, but I see we've got a few people joining already. Hey Brett, coming in from St. Paul, Minnesota, or Minneapolis, sorry. And Aline, hi guys, what's up? Michigan, all right, representing the Midwest here, I love it. Go Phillies, we've got Jim coming in. Love it. New Jersey, hey guys. What's up, Karen and Noah? Paris, all right, love it. A little intercontinental joining. Thank you, thanks for joining guys. Grand Junction, hey Christine, how's it going? Welcome. Brian and Holly, we've got Austin, Texas, California. This list is amazing, guys. Welcome to the virtual world of cocktails, right? Hopefully all of you have a cocktail in hand, and if you don't, we are going to be mixing up 3 delicious Manhattan riffs. Hey, Matt from New York. Mark, what's going on? Carl and Lex, I love this, all of this interaction. So I appreciate that. Keep the comments coming, guys, because all I can see is my face. I'd rather see your faces. So we're gonna focus in on these cocktails, what we're mixing today. And oh, awesome, Jim, doing a virtual tasting with Greg Metz, our master distiller for Old Elk Distillery. That's awesome. Well, welcome everyone. So today is a wonderful day because on this date, in December 5th of 1933, the US repealed prohibition. So thank goodness for that, because if that had not happened, we would not be here right now mixing up our delicious cocktails and enjoying a classy Manhattan. Awesome, we've got Williamsburg joined in too as well. Hey guys. So I'm here in Fort Collins, Colorado, and I am excited to be mixing up 3 different riffs of a Manhattan with you. So the Manhattan is a pre-prohibition cocktail, originated from the Jerome Mansion is the story, actually in Manhattan. And through the years, it's gone through a lot of different changes. I remember back in my bartending, first bartending days, we actually shook our Manhattans. Thank goodness somebody corrected that behavior in me. So we're not gonna be shaking any Manhattans today. We're gonna be stirring because we want to make sure all the flavors that we've got in our glass are gonna be translated to the cocktail well, and we're not gonna add any air or dilution by shaking it. We're just gonna do a nice little stir. So if you're at home, hopefully you've got some ice, you've got a mixing glass of some sort. You can have a beautiful mixing glass like this. You can have a pint glass like this. You can use a beautiful stirring spoon, nice, long and tall. So these are actually designed to fit in your hand and make the stirring motion easier. But you can also use a straw or just a regular kitchen spoon. And then we've got a couple different assortments of glassware. So classically, the Manhattan is served up, but there's no shame in drinking it down on ice as well. We are going to feature the classic Manhattan first. So what does classic refer to? Well, it refers to both the sort of original style, which was made with Italian vermouth, stirred heavy on the whiskey side, so 2 parts whiskey to 1 part sweet vermouth, and then Angostura bitters. So over here on the left, if you see, I have rye whiskey, Carpana Antigua, which is my go-to for an Italian vermouth. It's a delicious style of vermouth that's a little bit sweeter, has a really high vanilla content that's going to play nice with our rye, which also has a lot of fruit and spice to it. And then the Angostura bitters are an aromatic bitter. They're going to help to round this out. So that's what we're going to start with here. Any questions so far, guys? I see we're still kind of tuning in at the moment. I don't want to move too fast through this because we do have 3. And also, being repeal day, it's a marathon, not a race, guys, right? So we're going to cheers quite a few times today. Rye or bourbon from Jim? We are going to start with rye, and then we are going to move on to bourbon. I'm choosing rye for our classic riff because it's going to have a higher content of spice to it. And let's see, we've got Sandy asking, can you show the bottle of vermouth? It makes it easier to remember. Absolutely. So Sandy, we are using Carpana Antigua. This is an Italian vermouth. It has been used most classically for the style of vermouth that we are going to make right now, or sorry, style of Manhattan that we're going to make right now. So we're going to go with 2 parts our rye, 1 part are sweet vermouth, and then 5 dashes of Angostura bitters. So I like to, when I'm making a cocktail, I always start with the smallest ingredient first, but also sometimes the most, let's say, like flavorful. So our bitters is what I'm going to start with. I also, you know, I want to make sure I get the bitters in there, and sometimes in all the excitement to drink my cocktail, I might forget to put them in at the end. So we're going to start by putting 5 dashes of our Angostura bitters. And you can find these at a grocery store on most counters. They're actually an aromatic bitter, so they're not considered an alcoholic product. Funny thing. And the reason for that is because you couldn't actually drink an ounce of those. You would get very, very, very sick. And then we are going to use our Carpana Antigua, our sweet vermouth. And we've got Stephen asking, do I prefer a higher or lower proof? It kind of depends. It depends on each style of Manhattan. So with the classic, I do prefer a little bit higher. The reason being, it's going to have a lot more kick to it. I could enjoy one of these and be very happy with that for the rest of the day. And our rye is 100 proof. There are some ryes out there that are a little bit lower and a little bit higher, depending on if you go with a cask proof. And I just did 2 ounces of that. So 2 to 1 are the proportions. And then I'm going to add ice to my mixing glass. So I'm just curious what you all have planned today besides learning how to mix up delicious Manhattans. Anybody joining in for some of the other New York Cocktail Expo events happening this week? We did a delicious, we did an awesome competition on Monday with best whiskey in the old fashioned category. And that was at Dutch Kills there in New York. I'm going to add a little bit more ice. And the reason for that, I typically like my ice to come a little bit above what's called a wash line. So the wash line is just where the amount of liquid is hitting. And the reason for that is because I want to make sure that, well, it depends, right? So the amount of ice, the amount of liquid in the glass is going to dilute it faster or slower. And if I have less ice in there, but more liquid, it's going to dilute a lot faster, and you're going to end up with a watery cocktail, and nobody wants that. You still want to be able to taste your drink. Yes, we've got the 87th anniversary. Absolutely. So appropriate. This is a very classy cocktail to enjoy on a day like today. So I stirred that about 20 times. It's kind of a feel thing. In my 20 plus years of bartending, I have probably made, I'd say probably a couple hundred Manhattans. And that's not counting the ones that I've shaken. Those don't count. And if that happens to you at home, just use your scoop to pick it out. And with a classic style Manhattan, I would love to do a twist of orange and a delicious cherry. So I've got Luxardo maraschino cherries. These are amazing. If you haven't tried them, I definitely recommend it. They are an Italian. Ooh, come here. An Italian cherry that's super sweet, but also like decadent and rich. And I'm just gonna let it hang out on top of my glass for a minute because I don't want to get all that syrup in there. However, at home, if you wanted a sweeter style Manhattan, you could add a little bit of the cherry juice to your Manhattan, and it would be really tasty. I'm gonna bring this up here because I want to show you guys something. Yeah, so we got Lori doing a Detroit Detroit Prohibition class tonight. You should share where that's at, Lori, so we can join in later. Okay, so what I wanted to show you is when you're peeling your fruit, there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. So for an example of the wrong way, if you see, I've got my skin, I've got a little bit of pith, but then I've also got the actual flesh of the fruit. And I don't want that because when I squeeze it over my Manhattan, it's going to squeeze juice into my drink, and I don't want a juicy Manhattan. I want a delicious, dry, but slightly sweet Manhattan. And then if you see this one here, we've got a nice thick skin, we've got the pith, but we have no fruit on there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this between my fingers, facing with the skin out over my glass, and then I'm going to give it a quick squeeze. And then a little twist left and right, just to get the rest of the oils out of there, also for a little show. And then we are going to take the skin side and rub it along the glass. So rubbing along the glass spreads the aromatic oils out across the top of your glass rim. So when I take a sip, I'll actually get a little bit of that. There is a small percentage of the population, believe it or not, who are allergic to citrus oils. So if you've ever experienced burning or dislike for the citrus oil in your cocktail, you might be one of those people. Otherwise, the rest of us, which is like 90%, you should be enjoying. And then I just discarded that. I don't want to keep it in there because it's just going to add more bitterness. There is still oil and stuff in there. And top it off with my cherry. Cheers, guys. All right, so this is our first cheers of today's event. That is tasty. So our rye, as I said, is a high spiced, floral and fruity. And then the Carpana Antigua has got this like nice vanilla, a little bit of dry spice. It's super, I mean, it's on the sweeter side if you were going to drink this just by itself, which you can do with vermouth. It would be, I'd want to add like a little citrus to it or something because it is a more cloying by itself vermouth, in my opinion. Yeah, we've got Christine saying Luxardos are worth every penny. Hopefully, Christine, you are drinking a Manhattan right now with one of them in there. Hey, Ben, I appreciate that. So Ben tuning in says he's probably had about 50 of my Manhattans. I love it. Thanks, Ben. I wish I could see your face right now, but I'm so happy that you are tuning in and enjoying a Manhattan with us today. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these cherries, a little jar of them, I don't know, I think in the store they probably go for about $20. And you know, they're packed though, they're packed with a ton of flavor. You can use the juice, as I said, to riff more on your Manhattan. You can make a sour style cocktail. You can pour it over ice cream if you want to get decadent. And Christine, for sure, absolutely. All right, she's taking a hike, so she's gonna wait to drink her Manhattan. And she's here in Colorado, which we have beautiful mountains and horizons. All right, so that's our classic Manhattan. I'm gonna put it right over here, I think, just so I don't confuse it while I'm mixing along. So for those of you who maybe have some questions about vermouths, it's a fortified spirit. Basically, it's a wine base that is infused with different herbs, botanicals, and then they add a high proof spirit to it to actually elongate the flavor and help it have a shelf life. So if you have a bottle of vermouth at home and it's not in your fridge, I would beg you to please put it in your fridge and make sure it's tightly sealed at all times. And if you are a little obsessive compulsive like me, maybe put a date on it. Typically, a vermouth that has been in the fridge can last for about a month or so, depending on the vermouth and how much you've used it, so how much air has gotten into it. Funny fact, here in Colorado, the air, for some reason, I think it's the elevation, things last a lot longer. So our citrus lasts longer, our vermouths last longer. It's kind of a great side effect of being this high up in the mountains. All right, so we are going to move on to our reverse Manhattan. And a reverse Manhattan is just referring to how we are going to reverse proportions. So we're using American style domestic vermouths. The reason we're going with that is because in America, the best vermouths, in my opinion, come from Oregon. And they start with a wine base, but then it's really up to interpretation, right? You can have really bitter herbs, you can have tea style herbs, you can have even, gosh, you could throw some cucumber in there if you wanted to, cucumber skin. So there's just a lot of experimentation that has riffed off of what the Italians and the French have been doing. I have a bottle of Imbue, and this is a petal and thorn vermouth, and it's really heavy on chamomile and the floral qualities. It's also got kind of like a silky texture to it and just like a little hint of licorice. And that's going to be the base for our reverse Manhattan. So when you hear a bartender or somebody talk about the base of a cocktail, they're just talking about what is the biggest quantity to it. What's going to be, hey, Sandy. So Sandy's asking, is this a sweet or dry vermouth? So petal and thorn, they actually don't really categorize themselves as either one. Preferably, I would be mixing with a sweet if I was going to go with a more spicy. So if I was going to use a rye with this, I'd probably use a domestic sweet vermouth. But we're actually going to be using our blended bourbon. So I chose Imbue because it has a lot of those herbal qualities. And it's also widely available here in Colorado. You may have Via. They make a great sweet and dry vermouth as well. And they're domestic as well. And they do the same thing. It's just if you're going to categorize, you know, what makes the vermouth separate from each other, it really comes down to intensity of flavor. And then whether it's a sweet or dry, we'll see, you guys can see, there we go. Where it's made, so kind of like wine, right? If you're drinking a French wine, it's going to typically be a little more nuanced, a little more sophisticated. If you're drinking an American California wine, it might have more oak to it, more butter, more spice, just like big flavor in your face. And if you're drinking an Italian wine, you're going to get a little bit of all those things. So vermouth kind of follows the same lines as that, because at its base, it is a wine. And again, if you want to, you can enjoy these straight over ice with a little twist of fruit in it. Okay, so we are going to mix up our reverse Manhattan. And for this cocktail, I chose some Earl Grey tea bitters, a way to complement a cocktail and turn it into something that's uniquely yours, right? So the whole point of this is you want to learn how to make classic, follow the standard out there, right? You know it's going to be good, but then let's experiment a little bit and see how we can change out the vermouths, the bitters, and your whiskey to get something that's uniquely yours. So today we're going to make our reverse Manhattan. We're going to start with our bitters, and I'm using 1821, but there's a ton of bitters out there, and I would say if you can get your hands on local ones, check out what's on the shelves next time you're in the grocery store, or if you're lucky enough to have like a cocktail store around you, go in and taste through the bitters and ask them, what do they recommend? It's great to support local. And then we are going to go with a good amount. We're going to go with 2.5 ounces. All right. So 2.5 ounces. This is a 17% alcohol by volume, so not super boozy, although it is a little boozier than a glass of wine. So that was 2 ounces, and then I'm going to do another 1/2 ounce here. This smells great. If you guys are mixing at home and you have your vermouth in front of you, please, please, please just give it a nice little smell. And what that's going to do also is when you go to enjoy it, it's going to open it up. All right, so we're going with a 1/2 ounce of our bourbon here, 51% corn, and then ours is a really different and unique mash bill made by our master distiller, Greg Metz. It has 34% barley, so it's got this like kind of creamy maltiness to it, and a hint of sweet, and then 15% rye. And I'm going to add my ice glass here again. So Rachel, I used about a full dasher. As you can see, different bitter bottles will give you a different amount of bitters. So I went like I went a little more than this, if you can see that. And that's because these bitters are they're very intense. I also don't want the Earl Grey, the tea flavor, to override my vermouth, because this is meant to be the showcase here with the reverse Manhattan. Hey, Marie and Alexis. No, so we did 2.5, sorry, I can't read that. 2.5 ounces of the vermouth, and then a 0.5, so 1/2 ounce of our whiskey. And you could play around with that. Our whiskey is an 88 proof, so if this was a 100 proof whiskey, I might even bump that down to a 1/4 ounce. If y'all are wondering, you're watching, and you're like, hey, it seems like kind of a lot of like wiggle room here with how you're making these. Absolutely. The Manhattan, it has that ability to really taste good. No matter how you make it, as long as you don't shake it, and as long as you're using quality products, your vermouth is not, it's not bad, it's not spoiled, and you're just being sure to still balance everything. As you can see, the color on this is a lot lighter than our first Manhattan. And the reason for that would just be how they produced this vermouth. how long they let their botanicals steep in there, how long they let the grape skins stay on the mash. And I think that with this cocktail, we're going to switch it up and go with the lemon. And same rules apply, guys. So you don't want to get any of the skin mixed in with the fruit or the flesh of the fruit, because I don't want any juice in here. And as you can see, I did that little twist between my fingers. And I don't know if you folks can see this at home. I'll try, but see how my fingers are a little wet? That's actually from the oils of the citrus. And I'm going to choose not to rim the glass on this one because I just want a hint of citrus on my reverse Manhattan. Stephen, what do I think of a chilled glass? I think a chilled glass is definitely an amazing way to elevate your cocktail. It also, if you're at a bar or you're mixing at home, it helps to just keep the drink colder longer. I was a little light on ice today, so I didn't want to waste any of that. That's delicious. So there's like a strong tea flavor to it, chamomile. It's very soothing. At the end, I get this kind of like caramel finish with just a like hint of licorice. Sandy keeps her glasses in the freezer. Sandy, that is like a life hack right there. If anybody, I mean, even if you have to like rotate them in, right? It's like one glass at a time, you take it out, you put another one in. That also raises a good point. If you are a cocktail, at-home cocktail bartender and you are trying to get your home bar a little more set up, I recommend getting ice molds so that you can have great ice at home. I would do as Sandy does and keep a glass in the freezer at all times so that when you're wanting to enjoy a cocktail at home, you can pull it right out and pour right in. So this would probably be my sipping choice for this evening. I think I'm going to make another one of these a little bit later, just because it's got a lot of flavor to it. There's a little hint of the booze of the bourbon in there, but it's not so strong that I couldn't drink this and then maybe have like another cocktail or two, because it is Saturday and it is repeal day. So cheers everyone to that. Karen, are you asking about clear ice or like what type of water to get the ice clear? Just curious. I can tell you a little bit about that. As far as our bourbon goes, we do cut our bourbon with Colorado water. We also use a slow proofing process, and that means that we basically are adding water to our whiskey over a very long amount of time. So our process is about 2 weeks. The standard industry standard is like 2 to 5 days max, and that takes a long time for us. Over 2 weeks, we're actually doing like a little bit at a time, and the reason for that is because when you add water to alcohol, it burns off a lot of the flavors. And we don't want to do that. Our whiskey is delicious. Oh, okay. So Karen's asking, I have seen people use clear water to make clear ice. Okay, so there's a lot that goes into making ice. Basically, the reason that you have cloudy ice versus clear ice is that all the impurities in the water will get trapped in the ice, as well as air bubbles. So in a standard freezer, you have a process where the ice is freezing from the outside in. And the reason for that is just the temperature is not so, you don't have a subpar freezer. You also, it freezes so fast that sometimes it's trapping the impurities. So yes, the quality of water will affect it, but no matter what you do at home, you could get like the most nicest water from, Fiji or some other place in the world, and that's not going to be what gives you clear ice. Unfortunately, you also need to add a little bit of vibration. So what happens in the industry, what they do is they have something that's called a climb bowl machine, and it's huge. It's like the size of probably most of our places, like homes, and it has these moving belts in it, and they filled it with with water, and then the moving belts are vibrating as the ice is freezing. And what that is doing is pushing out the impurities, pushing out the air bubbles, and creating a nice, clear, thick layer of ice. Does that answer your question? Yes, that is so true, Karen. Yep. So top to bottom, you could hack this at home if you have a styrofoam glass, or you have even an insulated tumbler. So I have friends who have perfected this. You can fill it with water, and then make sure that the top is a little bit open, and put this in your freezer. and that will give you a clear ice cube almost 100% of the way. You still have to shave off a little bit. And you know, as it, I guess the other hack there is make sure there's a cup inside your insulated cup. So the reason for that is the insulation is going to help slow it down and reverse the freezing process. I'm actually gonna drink a little bit of this water. All right, we got lots of comments coming in here, guys. We've got Brian sharing some resources. Yes, so Alchemix, that is a great resource. He has made it his life mission to figure out the alchemy of ice and infusions and all kinds of fun at-home tricks for becoming a very good bartender. All right, so we are going to move our reverse Manhattan over here, and let's get a little crazy. All right, I've got chartreuse. I have chocolate bitters. I have French vermouth. And then we're going to go with our blended. And pardon me 1 second while I dump my ice here. Just going to give this a little wipe out because I don't want my last Manhattan to affect the flavor of my modern punk Manhattan. So I was thinking about this today, like where would I go for all of these different Manhattans in New York? If I was getting a classic Manhattan, I would probably go to Clover Club. They make some of the most delicious classic cocktails, and they really take care with the ingredients that they use and how they make them. And that would be my choice for a classic Manhattan. Someone's asking, where can you get the stoppers? We do have these occasionally on our merch website, so on oldelf.com. We also do giveaways with them a lot. So if you watch, if you keep track on our social media, on Instagram, you might get a chance to win those. And then, yeah, otherwise you got to visit me in Fort Collins at the tasting room, and I can hook you up with one of those. Do I ever do a 50-50 mix of rye and bourbon as a base? Yeah, Steve, I am a fan of mixing all spirits together. I often do Scotch with bourbon. I'll do, I've done gin and whiskey together in a cocktail. We've actually got a gin, vodka, and pineapple whiskey cocktail on our menu right now at the tasting room. It's kind of a riff on a Vesper, and it's delicious. It's like dry and fruitful, but not too sweet. And I would definitely recommend, you know, the joy of having a bar at home is that you can get a little creative. Oh, nice. Douglas says he had our Manhattan yesterday. That's awesome. Thanks, Douglas. All right, so we're gonna do our bitters again, right? I chose cocoa bitters. Angostura has a new product out. These cocoa bitters, they're awesome. They're kind of like changing my world as far as a Manhattan and old fashioned goes. I do only want to do 1 dash of these because I just want like a hint of the cocoa, a hint of the dryness. Oops, I did a little extra. Got excited. But there's also, I think Bitterman's makes a mole bitter, has a little more like deep chocolate spice, kind of smoke quality to it. That would play well as well in this cocktail. And then we are going to go with a 1/2 ounce of our vermouth, I'm sorry, of our chartreuse. Too many sips for me already. So the reason for that is this is a high proof liqueur. It's also, fun fact, one of the only liqueurs in the world that has a natural color like this. Typically in a distillation process, you lose all color, but these guys, they're actually a Chartreusian monk society. They have been making chartreuse for a long time. And the original recipe actually had 130 herbs in it. So if you can imagine, that's a lot of flavor. And just even pouring that in, I'm getting like a bouquet of awesome spice. Christine, she's asking, what's the difference between whiskey, Scotch, and bourbon? So if you think about it, Christine, whiskey is like the umbrella. It's like basically the umbrella of all the different types of whiskey that live under it. So that's just a category definition. And then Scotch comes from Scotland. It's made with malted barley typically. It can be smoky, it can be or referred to as peaty, it can be really smooth and sweet. just depends on what region it comes from and how they produce it. And then bourbon is American all the way. It can come from any part of America. It does not have to be Kentucky. There's definitely a misconception on that. And we are going to go with 1 ounce of vermouth in our punk rock modern twist. Coming back towards our more classic formula of 2 to 1, but still getting a little crazy because we subbed out 1/2 ounce of my whiskey with my chartreuse. And so we're gonna do 1.5 ounces of the bourbon. So bourbon itself is typically 51% corn as a minimum, has to be aged in new American oak, and it does have to be from America. However, there are many whiskeys out there that mimic it. So there's some delicious Japanese whiskeys that have a high corn content. They're going to be sweeter if they have a high corn content too. Getting low on my ice here. So I'm hoping all of you have some friends at home with you to enjoy these cocktails. Absolutely. Jen, thanks for asking. So any substitutes for the chartreuse? I would recommend for this cocktail, actually doing like a chocolate liqueur. You could do orange liqueur, so like a dry curacao or an orange curacao. The difference between that and triple sec is just the amount of sugar, basically. And I'm preferable to pure Ferrand dry curacao because it's drier. And it also would be staying in the vein of a French style Manhattan. Now add a little more ice because I feel like I'm getting a little too diluted here. So we did 1 dash of the chocolate bitters, 1/2 ounce of the chartreuse, 1 ounce of the French sweet vermouth, and then 1.5 ounces of our bourbon. And I have a coupe, one of my favorite styles of glassware. You can drink champagne out of these, you can drink wine out of these, and you can drink a cocktail out of these. And call that a little cocktail porn for you. Woo. So with this cocktail, we're gonna go back to our orange. And the reason for that is I just want a little bit more of that classically bitter dry. And it's also gonna play nice with the chocolate bitters. So again, if you're practicing at home, hopefully you're starting to perfect this. As you can see, I'm pinching it between my fingers and my thumb with the skin out and then over the glass. All right, and I'm going to discard. And cheers, everyone. Take a little sip. That's amazing. So Brian is subbing in Amaro Montenegro. That's an awesome sub. You've got, it's a delicious spirit with like lavender and like floral flavors to it, a little bit of orange, absolutely. You could also, Brian, use that in the reverse Manhattan. So you could do heavy on your vermouth and then about 1/2 ounce to 1 ounce of the Amaro Montenegro and 1 ounce of whiskey, and it'd be really, really tasty. That's a great spirit to have on your bottle to have on your back bar. So any questions, guys? I'm curious who else is mixing at home and if you're subbing in any different liqueurs or which one is your favorite. If you guys like the classic Manhattan, or did you like the reverse Manhattan more, or did you like the punk rock make it your own Manhattan? I'm partial, as I said, to the reverse today, I think. Very cool. So Julie is using her Maker's Mark. Could you use Cointreau instead of chartreuse? Sandy wants to know. You could, totally. It's going to be, well, I'd say sweetness level, they're probably about the same. Chartreuse is pretty sweet and Cointreau can be pretty sweet too. So absolutely. Yeah, that would be a great substitute. We've got a bourbon and cherry bourbon mix. Awesome. Yeah, so the ratios for the reverse Manhattan, think about it as a formula, right? So you got 2 to 1 for the classic, we're just going to reverse that. So we did 2.5 ounces actually of our vermouth, and then 1 ounce of our, sorry, ½ ounce of our whiskey in that one. So we've got Alicia, I'm digging the reverse, how to use some different brands. That's quite all right. Hey, we are, we're not here to sell you whiskey, although we hope you'll get to try ours in the future. Really, we're here to make cocktails with you guys, connect. Being part of the New York Cocktail Expo Week is something that is a lot of fun. They've done a great job this year. We were there last year and we're part of their Tiki Throwdown. We're also going to be part of their Tiki Throwdown this year, and they've been offering these free webinars to everybody this week, which is just an awesome thing. I know they had how to mix cocktails this week and a sous vide class, and I think we have one more coming up as well too. You should totally check out what's going on at New York Cocktail Expo. And also, if you guys are making your Manhattans, please feel free to post them, share them, tag Old Elk Bourbon and NY Cocktail Expo, and we'll repost them for you. You can also use our official hashtag, which is the New York CEO Online Week, so NYCE Online Week hashtag, and they'll make sure to repost those for you too. I've got a 2-to-1, and let's see, Mark, you're asking, we're using the 2-to-1 and the 1 can be a huge variable, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you are, also again, it depends on the vermouth, right? If you're using the sweeter, more robust style of vermouth, this is also sometimes called a rosso. Yeah, you want to back down on that depending on what the whiskey is that you're using. That's why we went with the rye, because it's going to have a higher spice content. There's also higher proof at 100 proof. So yeah, it just all depends on what you're mixing with. But there's so much variability that you can control with your vermouths and your bitters and your whiskeys. And thank you. Thanks, Mark, for checking us out and trying our Old Elk. Sandy says she often uses sweet and dry. I love it. So Sandy, that's what's called a perfect Manhattan. And it just refers to using equal parts sweet and dry vermouth to complement each other. That's I would say that you are one of the elite Manhattan drinkers. It's definitely an acquired taste. I've always had high respect for somebody who walks into my bar and asks for a perfect Manhattan, because it shows me that they I don't know, they've got like a little more esoteric / like elevated palate maybe, not to call all of us, you know, subpar, but that perfect Manhattan just tells me that they like to play around with their vermouths. They also understand that vermouth can be a beautiful thing. Again, a lot of people are scared of it because they've had just a bad experience with, say, Melinda Maddox back in, you know, 1997, mixing up a shaken Manhattan with the dry old vermouth that was pulled off the back bar. Not good. I'm sorry, guys, if I've ever done that to you. Douglas, will recording be available? I think so. I know we are recording it, so I imagine that these will be up and available for people to view. One of the cool things that New York Cocktail Expo is doing is just kind of extending the program out. So typically, like last year, I think it was a day, and this year they've been doing it all week. And I know that these resources are something they want to keep on sharing with the community. So yeah. What was the Zoom coming up tonight? You know, guys, I apologize. I don't know if New York Cocktail, I know that the person from Detroit was saying that they had a cocktail class coming up tonight. If you're still hanging out with us, please share with folks. I think that's awesome. Let's spread the love, the cocktail love. Brian loves a perfect Manhattan. Okay, let us know. Ooh, black walnut bitters. Black walnut bitters are another way to take your Manhattan from the mundane to punk rock and awesome. So we've got, so Matt says we have classes on rum and aged spirits on Monday, guys. You should definitely tune into that. And you could also make a Manhattan. That kind of raises a good point with rum. You can make a Manhattan with rum. You can make it with mezcal. You can make it with tequila. You can make it with gin and then call it a Negroni. You could also make it with vodka and call it a vodka Negroni. So there's a lot of variations on the actual classic recipe. Love it. We've got so many people. Thank you, guys. Black walnut aperitif. I don't think I've ever had that. That sounds amazing though, Brett. Which Amaro to use instead of the green chartreuse? So we had somebody using the Amaro Montenegro. You could also use Sfumetto. So S-F-U-M-A-T-O is how you spell it. It's a rhubarb Amaro, and it's delicious. It's like smoky and vegetal, and you taste rhubarb and like a little bit of that like tang, but it's also like the smoke is delicious. So I would recommend that as a sub. All right, I know Matt is watching right now, so shout out to Matt. He is our head of the New York Cocktail Expo Week. He's been working hard. He's been part of all these classes. He's been communicating with all of us, letting us know when to get on and watch them. He's also hosting the different competitions. He's crushing it. So thanks, Matt, and I know he's gonna give you guys some answers there. Hey. All right, guys. So I think that probably wraps it up for us. Again, if you made cocktails with us today, please repost them. If you're making one later today, also please repost. We'll post and then we will repost. You can do that at New York Cocktail Expo, at Old Elk Bourbon, and then the official hashtag is NYCE Online Week. And that's gonna wrap it up for us, guys. I have three Manhattans to drink. And I'm gonna go with this one. Cheers, guys. One final cheers and happy repeal day, guys. Thanks, Sandy. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Alicia. Thank you, Ben, Martin. So many of you for tuning in. You've got Noah. I couldn't actually see the screen too well from far away there. So Steve, Jim, Noah, guys, thank you everyone for tuning in, and thank you again, Matt. All right, time to drink some Manhattans. Cheers.